a wooded area with tall trees, large ferns, and a small pond. Logo: National Park Service. Text: Acadia National Park, Wild Gardens.
We are very concerned about invasive species in the park. They are one of the biggest problems that we have because they can displace native species. They can even change whole ecosystems.
Text: Managing invasive species by the National Park Service Inventory and Monitoring Program. Large, thick vines twisting through the trees. Text: Invasive Oriental Bittersweet Vine. Kate Miller, plant ecologist, Northeast Temperate Inventory and Monitoring Network.
So invasive species are basically a problem worldwide. Even in our national parks, which have like the highest level of protection, there are invasive species problems either because they were planted a long time ago or species just move in by either people moving them in or a lot of birds disperse berries.
Invasive, Japanese barberry. Invasive, mugwort weed.
So they come in, they become established, and then they create problems ecologically.
Walking through woods with a large sprayer pack. Pulling up invasive species. Text: Richard Evans, ecologist, Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area.
The best way to deal with invasive species is to prevent them from getting into the park. The next best way is to eradicate them as soon as they are found.
Invasive, Japanese stilt grass.
If we can't do either of those, then we have to make decisions about which we will battle, because once they become established, it becomes much more difficult and expensive to try to control them.
Invasive, hemlock woolly adelgid.
Hemlock woolly adelgid is a tiny insect that came from Japan and has spread throughout the eastern United States from Georgia to Maine.
Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area, forest stream.
We discovered it in Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area in 1989. From our monitoring studies, we estimate more than 40% of the hemlock trees have died, and most of the remaining trees are in various stages of moderate to severe decline. Hemlock woolly adelgid is a case of what some people call an invasive species meltdown. So you have initially just one invasive species leading to a cascade invasion of many other invasive species, changing the whole habitat and ecosystem.
Invasive, kiwi vine. Digging a small hole with a trowel and placing small capsules inside. Text: Hemlock woolly adelgid treatment.
We have treated well over 10,000 trees in the park, but those treatments are neither financially or ecologically sustainable. We do not want to be treating many thousands of hemlock trees indefinitely with insecticides. So we just did that as a stopgap measure, largely to maintain habitats that were very important for other species like brook trout.
Small fish swimming in stream. Text: Brook trout.
That's why the woolly adelgid is such an important pest for us to try to control, because it doesn't just affect a tree or trees, it can change the whole ecosystem. It changes the whole habitat. The whole forest is changing.
Evergreen trees with tiny white spots dotting the branches. Text: Douglas Manning, Invasive Plant Detection, Eastern Rivers and Mountains Inventory and Monitoring Network.
Inventory and monitoring is something that goes on often behind the scenes. A lot of visitors aren't even aware that it's going on, that there are teams of scientists out there monitoring the health of these ecosystems. Each inventory and monitoring network has a list of vital signs that are a way for us to really check up on the health of the park, whether that's looking at forest health monitoring, measuring tree regeneration and soil quality, or we can look at something like water quality.
Taking a water sample from the stream. Text: Invasive species early detection.
Invasive species early detection monitoring program is a protocol that we set up and is designed to look at new invasive species and incipient plants, insects, and other organisms that are not in the parks yet, but may pose a threat in the future.
Invasive, Norway maple. Acadia National Park Forest Trail. Rebecca Colwell, Resource Chief, Acadia National Park.
We have great concerns about invasives, both plants and animals, that are coming our way. Emerald ash borers, for example, that attack ash trees, and red pine scale.
Purple box hanging from a tree. Sign: National Park Service. Please do not disturb. Emerald ash borer traps survey.
So far, knock on wood, we do not have any hemlock woolly adelgid in Acadia National Park. But we expect that it's on the doorstep, the Inventory and Monitoring Network, because they're out in the park on a regular basis, provide real-time eyes on the ground, and will help with really rapid early detection of those invasives.
cutting out brush.
That's a really powerful opportunity when something has not yet established a foothold here, and we can actually go in and remove it and keep it out of the parks.
Text, exotic plant management team.
The exotic plant management team's job is to remove exotic plants that are invasive in the park. They're generally focused on species that could become a problem, but they're still at levels that are manageable. And a lot of what they do is either mechanical removal, where they're cutting down shrubs. So in some areas where there's really dense example of an invasive species, they'll actually spray the leaves with the herbicide. It's kind of the easiest way for them to kill the plant.
Standing on a rocky ledge watching a sunset.
The mission of the National Park Service is to protect the natural and cultural resources of all our parks forever. So we take that mission really to heart. The Inventory and Monitoring Network work is a perfect example of that mission in action. The I&M scientists are out in our parks so that they can provide real-time good science for management decisions so that we can take care of those resources in perpetuity for the American people.
National Park Service logo. Cooperatively produced by the following inventory and monitoring networks: Northeast Temperate, Eastern Rivers and Mountains, Mid-Atlantic, National Capital Region, with the help of Acadia National Park, Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area, Morristown National Historic Park, Shenandoah National Park.